We're just going to continue from the previous slide then. So onto the next slide, we'll be talking about low sugar. So again, we know that if we do have excess sugar, it can lead you to things like, type 2 diabetes, again, stroke and heart attack. So in terms of sugar, I suppose it's how do we, because we still need sugar at the end of the day. Especially I think our brains, it requires sugar to sort of function. So we can't completely eliminate sugar. I suppose it's just using the carbohydrates that has like wholemeal, like sort of like wholemeal breads, brown rice, brown pastas. Those are the kind of things that has dietary fiber as well in them, so that it takes longer time to break down, and it makes you feel full longer. So in terms of like the dietary fiber, again, the recommendation is to have 30 grams of dietary fiber, and that includes the your 5 a day. So for your 5 a day, each portion of your 5 a day is supposed to be at least 80 grams. So let's say for the small fruits, so I do have a satsuma here. So two of this it's considered as one portion, or two plums is considered as one portion. For things like your medium-sized fruits, so for apples, bananas, pears, just one of them is considered as one portion size as well. And for the bigger foods such as melons, watermelons, rock melon, and pineapples, a slice of it is considered as one portion. Frozen fruits as well, it's considered as your one portion a day as well. Tin fruits as well. Just be wary that when you do get tin fruits, make sure to get them in the fruit juices rather than the syrups, because syrups it's additional sugar basically. Usually for those who have diabetes, what we will usually recommend is to have only two portions of fruits. And when you do have two portions of fruits, so again, when it comes to the fruits, the portion sizes might be slightly different for those with diabetes, because we don't want to cause a huge spike. And when you do have each portion of fruits, what we will usually recommend is to have at different timings rather than having it one sitting, just to make sure that you're not having too much sugar at one sitting. Fruit juices. So fruit juices, the recommendation is to not have more than 150 mLs, because that kind of protects you from your teeth, animals as well. In terms of vegetables, so a portion size of vegetables, let's say for sweet corns, or I'm thinking of like things like peas. So that will be three tablespoons. And if it's your greeneries, your green vegetables, spinach, salad, that will be just one cereal bowl as well. So that will be considered as one portion. So that's how you can get like your dietary fibers. Pulses. So for pulses, it's about 4 tablespoons. It's considered as one portion. So those are the kinds of way that you can get dietary fiber in your carbohydrate, and not too much sugar as well, because you kind of the way the sugar is being broken down is slightly is slower. It's kind of different as compared to if you're having things like the refined sugar, like biscuits or cakes. Those are the kinds that's going to be really high. Again, like things like baklava, those are going to be really, really high in sugar. So it's all about trying to make sure that the portions, if you are craving for it, just make sure that the portion that you're having is not too much, and not have it too often. And if you find that controlling the temptation is going to be difficult, then just not have it at home, have it outside, and put it on a plate, so that you're kind of aware that this is how much I'm having. Is this okay for myself? Yeah. Next slide, please. So in terms of meat, again, I think in terms of the processed meat and red meat, we all know that that can actually cause an increased risk of having colon cancer. It can also increase the risk of strokes and heart attacks. So what the recommendation is to not have more than 70 grams of any red meat or any processed meat. So that's, again, the portion size of the palm, and that is kind of like a per day thing. So and I think in terms of like the Middle East, and also like the Asians, tend to kind of be heavy on towards the meat. So I think what we could do to reduce it is to use like alternatives such as chicken, and you can also have things like your beans, your legumes, pulses. Tofu might be slightly foreign to maybe like the Middle Eastern cuisine, because I don't think I've ever actually seen any tofu being used in like the Middle Eastern cuisine, but that could be something that, you know, something to trial for this is Ramadan. In terms of, again, fish, it's recommended to have at least 2 fish in a day, and one of the fish that it's oily fish, so have at least one oily fish per week. Again, as I said previously, it's 140 grams, because that contains the omega-3, that helps again to reduce the risk of any heart diseases or heart conditions. And try to reduce the processed meats, because that contains a lot of salt, and that increases the risk of colon cancer especially. And I think the recommendation here as well to say try to have some meat-free days as well. So on those days, your alternative for proteins would be things like your legumes, your pulses, your beans. So I think, like, let's say for I think the Egyptian, there's this one I'm trying to think, koshari. I think there is the lentils as well, and I think like in the South Asian, there is dal. So those are actually also soft proteins. So it's just that maybe some might not be aware that legumes and pulses are actually considered as proteins. Next slide, please. So again, in terms of oral health, if I can just bring up this one. So with oral health, it's really important that, you know, we're sort of taking care of our hygiene, our oral hygiene, even though we're sort of fasting. So during Ramadan, our sleep is being disrupted. So our health can also sort of be there is a word for it, but it's not coming to my mind. But basically, it is advisable for us to try and brush our teeth at least twice a day. And if you are actually planning to brush your teeth after iftar, give it at least a 30 minutes break between the last spoonful that you have for iftar. Give it about 30 minutes before you actually brush your teeth, because this can, so if you were to brush your teeth right after you have your iftar, that can actually erode your enamels on the teeth as well. And this will actually be a good time to take this advantage to sort of bring back the sunnah of using the miswak into our daily routines. But also, even if you're using miswak, also do not forget to brush your teeth using the toothbrush and the toothpaste during the non-fasting hours. And if you are drinking any acidic or any fizzy drinks, just remember to sort of gargle your mouth with water, or drink some water, so that you can sort of keep the acids away from your teeth. So acidic drinks, fizzy drinks such as Coca-Cola or Pepsi, those are the sorts of examples. Next slide, please. So Safwan, do you want to take this slide?
Yeah, sure. So this is more in regards to smoking cessation, so quitting smoking. I mean, in Ramadan, it's trying not to be tempted to sort of figure out between iftar and suhoor, because this is that great opportunity to sort of stop, build that habit and stop any bad habits, really. Just do your best, really, for quitting smoking. Anything you want to add there?
I think you know, just in terms of like the nicotine patch, from what we've all sort of agreed, that it's not gonna break our fast if you do actually have a nicotine patch being placed on yourself. So again, that would be actually a good, this is actually a really good time for us to, if you're smoking and you're thinking of stop from trying to stop from smoking, I think those will be the best time. And there's also things like the NHS smoking cessation, I think that's what it's called. So those are like the other alternative programs that you can sort of get into if you're kind of really serious about trying to stop smoking.
Yeah, there's one point I wanted to mention with regards to the brushing your teeth. And that's actually the I know we all heard it before when we were very young, but the 2 minute rule. So making sure you do actually brush your teeth for 2 minutes. And the way I think of it is though you've got sort of eight quadrants of the teeth. You've got sort of the bottom, bottom left, bottom right, then the back as well, back, bottom left, back, bottom right, and same with the top, top left, top right, and then the back as well. So if because by splitting it into eight, it doesn't the 2 minutes doesn't seem as long then.
Yeah.
And also it makes sure that you cover sort of all areas of your teeth. You're not missing any areas out and focusing on sort of the roots of the teeth as well. So you're getting at those the gums as well.
And I think just don't not forget to floss as well, because sometimes food can get stuck in between your teeth, and try to brush your tongue as well. Because I think that really helps to eliminate any sort of odor or anything, and bad breath or anything.
And the other thing, as you mentioned, which is if you, especially if you drank fizzy drinks or drinks, not to brush your teeth straight afterwards, it makes it worse because you can just rub the sugar more into your teeth, which is not good. Okay, next slide, please. Moving healthy. Okay, so I'll take this over to Mujib, who is our more specialist, well, more knowledgeable than myself with regards to exercise.
I'm sure he's just as knowledgeable, all of you, I'm sure. So with regards to exercise in Ramadan, I'm a big advocate of exercise anytime really. However, we see Ramadan as a golden opportunity to get into new habits. For example, starting a fitness program where you do a little bit every day, and then you see a difference in a couple of months. And exercise is vital for any age group. Even if you have medical conditions, something can be done exercise-wise. And unfortunately, in the Muslim community, we neglect that a lot, especially at the extremes of age, and especially women as well. So something that I see is definitely on the improve curve. So there are signs things are changing, which is great. So if you listen to this, make sure you're one of those things. You make sure you're one of those people who are joining the movement of getting into exercise. So Ramadan specifically is a challenge because you're already subjecting your body to the stress of fasting and dehydration, which is a way of worship. So you have very different energy utilization and energy stores. When you start fasting, so the first couple of days of Ramadan, your body is still confused and trying to adapt. By maybe day 10, your body is very efficient at utilizing energy. So you can actually do more exercises as you get to become a better faster. So i.e. 10 days onwards. So my recommendation is the first few days is to take it very light, take it very easy. And then by day 10, you can go up and do some more exercise. You won't do any harm unless you have medical conditions, then you need to seek special advice. You need to speak to someone who has medical background, someone who has fitness background, who can guide you, understand your condition, and guide you, give you specific tailored advice to your needs. So one of the things that we can all do is build into our routine physical activity. For example, instead of driving to the mosque, we can walk to the mosque. Instead of standing up in prayer in a maybe not a very good posture, you stand in prayer in a very good posture. When you do your core, when you do your sujood, you do it in the best form possible, which in a way it's a form of stretch for the joints. So just by trying to perfect the way you address those acts of worship, you get into a better routine and you get physical activity integrated into your lifestyle. And then when you want to add more, the general advice is you try, if you want to lose weight, 1 hour before fasting, you do a gentle walk, half an hour walk or so. And if you are someone who normally exercises and you do want to lose your performance during Ramadan, then if you want to do explosive and high resistant training, then the best time to do it is when you have energy stores topped up, which will be after sahur. So the key thing here is to listen to your body. So you try and you don't overdo stuff. You don't subject yourself to injury or excessive tiredness so that you are functionless the rest of the day. And then making sure that you seek advice, especially from those who are experts in the fields and those who deal with this day in, day out. I think there might be more slides about the NHS advice in terms of what is the recommended physical activity everybody should do. I think that probably in the next slide. And would generally recommend 75 minutes of vigorous exercise 3 times a week, or 150 minutes of moderate 3 times a week. So just to make it simple, to break it down into similar numbers, I would say 30 minutes of exercise that you actually sweat 3 times a week, or 1 hour 3 times a week where you actually don't have to work as hard. These are the minimum amount that everybody should do anytime. So in Ramadan, of course, we have to account for the period of fasting and what you would like to achieve. But starting with integrating physical activity into your routine will mean that after Ramadan, inshallah, you will be in the better mindset to actually engage into more exercise and have fitness goals that you would like to achieve. Goals are very important in everything, including fitness. There's so many people who go to the gym and maybe go for years and not have any results, or maybe go to the gym for a couple of weeks and then drop out and then go back and they don't see any real benefit. That's because they don't have goals. If you have goals, then you will work to achieve them. If you don't achieve them, then you will ask yourself why. And if you can't answer that, then you will ask someone who may help you. And then you will achieve your goal. And also, Ramadan is not a month where we just fast and sleep. A lot of us, alhamdulillah, are working, and by definition, you have to wake up early, you have to go to work. So there's a lot of fitness and physical activity involved in that. But if you are not working, you, for example, take a month off, then you will not achieve the maximum benefit of Ramadan by sleeping during the day. Even if your intention is to do ibadah, you remember the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba did not sleep during the day. They had their normal day activities. They even had business and the travel and the battles during Ramadan. You know, they didn't used to say, okay, it's Ramadan, we'll have to pause and then come back another time. Life continues. Yeah, anything else you guys want to add to the exercise from your experience, or any tips you have for people who might be listening?
So, especially with me when it comes to exercise in Ramadan, I get a bit hesitant to exercise because my body has quite a fast metabolism. So I think so for me it's that thought of, oh, if I exercise, because I'm not able to eat as frequently, then it's easier for my body to go into a deficit and then start using up storage, which would end up in weight loss, which for some people is really good. But for those who have, let's say, very like high metabolism, like ectomorph sort of bodies, then can be a bit more of a challenge. What are your thoughts on that?
Do you normally exercise?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a common misconception that people think if I exercise in Ramadan, I'd lose weight. Okay. When we look at how we utilize our energy stores, if a muscle is not being used, it will get burnt. Okay. Muscle size will shrink. So this will happen in Ramadan. The only thing to combat that is to stimulate the muscle not to shrink. And that comes from exercise. So if you exercise and you lose weight, then you're not losing muscle mass, you're losing fat. You're losing fat within the muscle, fat around the muscle. So yes, you may look smaller, but your muscle strength will be maintained and you can gain everything else very quickly after Ramadan. But if people, for example, I used to do the same. I used to, when Ramadan comes, I say, okay, I don't want to lose any muscle mass. I'm just gonna, stay as I am. What happens is I still lose, weight, and it turns out it's muscle, because after Ramadan you try to do the same exercise and you realize that your performance has dropped. So what I would recommend is to do exercise. However, I would also recommend the calories you should take. You should make sure you are taking those at night. So, for example, if you used to take 2,000, calories, for example, then you try and use that. You may need some supplements, right? So that would be the best situation. Is you still take your normal intake of calories and still do the normal exercise. If you can't, then still do some form of exercise, because stopping altogether is never good. Uh, Physically, you lose muscle mass, and mentally, you may lose motivation. You may come out of the habit of exercise. And a lot of people do that. After Ramadan, they find it so difficult to go back into the gym, go back to the sports. It takes some months to get back to that level of discipline and habit.
So provided that you're, let's say if you want to maintain your muscle mass, provided you're meeting the body's protein requirements, you won't start losing muscle mass.
Especially if you stimulate the muscle. If you stimulate the muscle with workout, even if you don't take the adequate calories, if the muscles realize they have to stay powerful, then you will start losing weight somewhere else, not the muscle. The muscle will be the last resort rather than the first resort. So the key here is keeping the muscles stimulated through resistance training. So, for example, some of people I'm involved in personal training. So some people that when Ramadan comes and they're, for example, in hypertrophy mode of training, I drop them down to a power. I drop them down to power and strength. So that means you do higher weight and lower reps, because that is the maximum at stimulating the muscles and keeping it conditioned for a period of 6 weeks or so.
Okay. And if you did want to continue that resistance training, then as you said, you should the best time to do it is after suhoor.
Yes, so the best time to do it is after suhoor, because you still have a lot of energy. So you will be putting way more weight through those muscles than if you do it before iftar. But if your aim was to lose weight or tone up, then before iftar would be the best.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, please. Okay, so yeah, a few ideas, as Wajid mentioned. So light exercise before suhoor. Even after iftar, that light exercise can just, you probably know this better than me, Wajid, help with constipation, lighten yourself up and kind of prepare for Tarawih.
Yes, what we don't realize is the body is designed to exercise. Our ancestors used to hunt, they used to have manual jobs, they used to walk, they used to climb. They didn't have cars, lifts, all those things we have nowadays. So the body is designed genetically to actually work. And if it doesn't, it accumulates so many diseases, so many poor lifestyle related conditions. So if your job and your lifestyle does not have physical activity, you should make time to have physical activity so that you actually enjoy the body that's the gift from Allah in the best way possible. And in doing so, you will be able to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the best form possible for the longest time possible. And one thing here to stress is stretching. Stretching is very important and it's very commonly neglected. As we get older, the importance of stretching becomes more and more pronounced. And that's because of joints get stiff, they get worn, and we don't move the joint to its extreme range of movement. So the function range of movement then diminishes with time, and that is why we get injuries, why it's harder to rehabilitate from injuries later on in life. So stretching is very, very important. So in Ramadan, when people stand for long hours, maintaining single posture for a prolonged period of time, and maybe have imbalance of electrolytes in their bloodstream, maybe also have sleep deprivation, it becomes very important to actually have some stretching exercises. The stretching does not only help your joints and muscles and tendons, but also it has therapeutic effects. It has calming and detoxifying effects as well. So having a set time for stretching is very, very important. So for example, after Taraweeh could be an ideal time. And this is what we call anchoring. So you have an activity that you associate it with another activity. So when it becomes an easy habit. So after Taraweeh, I do 10 minutes of stretching. That's it. It becomes a habit, becomes something you're used to, and then you carry on doing it. And it doesn't have to be after Taraweeh. You can pick another time, but just pick another time that will remind you to stretch, and then you do it consistently. So these are one of the things that help people comply and maintain a habit that they picked up.
If I can just represent the non-gym goers, in terms of like exercises, like I think sometimes when we mention exercise, people will immediately just associate it with gym. And how you were saying, like, you know, or like even like our parents or like my parents, like, you know, they as they grow older, they tend to not maybe engage with exercise as often as they used to. So are there any ideas where they can do exercises such as, you know, like brisk walking, but also something that they can do at home whilst that they, you know, instead of just sitting down on the sofa while they're watching TV, and like in terms of like stretching, what sort of examples of stretching that they can do that will be safe for them, for someone who hasn't engaged with exercises for so long?
So generally, stretching should be done when the body is warm. Otherwise, you may risk injury. So I would recommend maybe a stationary bike for 5-10 minutes, followed by exercises to stretch the hamstrings, stretch the back, stretch the arms. And you know, those things can be, you know, prescribed by a personal trainer, for example. With regards to easy exercises, that, you know, yes, you're right, the gym is not, you know, the only way to exercise. There's so many different ways. For example, we are involved in hiking competitions. So you don't have to go as extreme as hiking competitions, but you can go for a walk in a lake. You can go to hill walking. So hill walking is a strenuous exercise, but you don't feel it that strenuous because you enjoy nature, you enjoy fresh air, you enjoy listening to animals, the birds singing. So it's a very therapeutic experience. But then when you finish your hill walking and you look at how many calories you burnt, and you know that's been actually a very, very decent day in terms of physical activity. And then there are other sports, for example, playing, you know, low impact sports like table tennis, maybe badminton, volleyball. Um, so low impact sports, swimming. So there are so many low impact sports that I'd recommend people who are starting with to engage in and use them as routine. If people who are staying at home, they may watch an online training that they can participate in remotely. They can play, for example, in the garden with their grandkids or their kids. Small, for example, basketball game, you know, basketball court. All those things are small, but again, with time, if you do them often, a couple of times a week, in 5 years' time, the body you have will be 10 times, maybe a million times better than the body of somebody who hasn't done any of these activities in the last 5 years.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, my health conditions. So yeah, one thing to mention here is if you do have any newly diagnosed health conditions or any health conditions in general, it is best to speak to your GP or doctor regarding whether you should fast or not, as it's can be very case by case sort of situation and quite complex as well. BIMA has the Ramadan compendium as well, which can be referred to for guidance on fasting and sort of when you can fast with certain health conditions and when you can't. But yes, there may be some cases where one diabetic patient can fast, but another diabetic patient cannot fast. So do seek specialist advice if you're unsure. Next slide, please. Okay, yeah. So just a few sort of common things that may arise. Heartburn can arise due to overeating. So again, sort of controlling your portion sizes and avoiding like fried foods. Headaches as well, which can be due to caffeine withdrawal, sleep deprivation, or reduced water intake. So making sure you're keeping your fluids up as well. Yeah, making sure you're having enough water as well. Constipation due to lack of movement and like as you say, exercise, making sure you exercise regularly, that can help a lot as well. And not having enough fluid can also increase risk of kidney stones as well. So making sure you've got fluid running through the kidneys can also really help. Next slide, please.
Sorry, if I could just really quickly add on to the slide before. When you were saying about this heartburn, it's just sometimes when you overeat as well, you start to get tired, and then you might just be like, okay, I'm just gonna get a 5 minutes lying down on the sofa. That can actually also lead to heartburn or any refluxes, because there's a lot of acid in your stomach and it's just going straight up to your esophagus. So try not to lie down as soon as you finish a meal. Again, oily food can also lead to refluxes. Again, with the constipation as well. The other, maybe, reason why you could potentially have constipation, it's you're probably not having enough water, or you're not having enough dietary fiber. So again, just make sure that you're meeting all the vegetables and the fruits and having enough fluids throughout the day.
Oh.
Yes, the importance of fluids cannot be underestimated in Ramadan. This is one of the things we also neglect. Well, not neglect, but maybe we don't realize we don't have much time. There's the window of time to actually consume fluids is very short, and it's really difficult to have adequate intake in those few hours. The only way around it is to actually have little and often, and aim for the 2 liter or 3 liter or whatever is important for that individual. And lots of people develop kidney stones in Ramadan because of this dehydration. So dehydration not only affects your kidney filtration, but also can give you headaches, can give you constipation, and it can just make you tired and not enjoy the spiritual feelings of Ramadan. So along with drinking water, there are other ways of keeping hydrated, like for example, fruits and vegetables that are rich in water, like cucumber, watermelons, and smoothies. Making smoothies with the milk, water, all those things will have fluids in them. Milkshakes, and I would also bring everybody's attention to avoid fizzy drinks and caffeinated drinks, because those things are high in sugar, but also they can stimulate urination. So you think you may be hydrating yourself, but in fact you are dehydrating yourself with these stimulant drinks.
Yeah, really good points there, especially the kind of it's better to drink water regularly rather than try it in the last minute, in the last 2 minutes before sort of suhoor ends. One thing that some mosques do, my local mosque also does, is during Tarawih, they usually have water bottles as well on the side. So you can, between your two rakahs, just have a sip of water before you then go into the next rakah. So sort of drinking very regularly rather than trying to drink 2 liters in 1 minute at the end. Next slide, please.
Sorry. When you're saying about water, I know some people do sort of struggle with drinking of water, especially if they're really used to having fizzy drinks, like drinks that are really sweet and stuff. So trying to go from having really sweet drink to something that doesn't have taste at all, that can be actually a struggle for some. So what I usually do sometimes, especially during Ramadan, when when you're abstaining from food, as the days goes by, I personally feel that some of my taste buds gets lost, if that makes sense. So what I usually do is add some lemon to my drinks to have like citrusy. It sort of just stimulates myself, and that makes drinking water easier. Sometimes having it cold and also can help to make the water go down much more easier. So those are the kind of things that you can sort of think about to try to increase the water consumption.
Yeah, and it's kind of weighing up what's better and how feasible it is to make that change. If you are someone who really is relying on juice and fizzy drinks, then sometimes it's better to maybe, if you can't switch to water straight away, switch to the water, but then add some squash to it, just to give it some flavor. Because if you compare squash to fizzy drinks, it's better to have squash than to have fizzy drinks, and then better to have water than to have squash, because then some squashes have sugar in them as well. Okay, cool. Let's just wrap up then. So, Alhamdulillah, we've covered a wide range of topics. I hope that it was, well, we hope that it was beneficial to all of you, inshallah. Even if, you took one piece of information away, even that's brilliant. Sometimes it could be hard to retain all this information. So I find just taking like nuggets of information that you found useful and then applying those in your day-to-day routine can really help. And sort of the best way to remember this stuff is to apply it in your life, and then you won't sort of forget. Any last words, guys, in the last 60 seconds?
I think just be cautious of what you're putting into yourself, because you only have that few hours of windows to eat. So be really cautious of what you're eating. Ask yourself, is this going to be nutritious for you to last the entire day? And yeah, just hydrate yourself.
From me, make this a better Ramadan. Whatever you did last year, inshallah, make this a better one, and make it a habit that every Ramadan that you live, that you have a better one, inshallah.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. Just waiting for that time to end now.